Hello everyone, welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to make 3 roses. Just got commissioned to do a bouquet of roses for a wedding from one of my clients. I figured it'd make a great YouTube video, so that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to show you the step on making one of those roses. I won't bore you with the details of all the rest of them, but essentially if you make one, you can make 100 exactly the same using this process. So hope you enjoy the step-by-step, and we'll get through it, and I look forward to teaching you all today. Have a great day. Alrighty, this is going to be step 1. I make my roses with laser cut blanks. You can find these blanks just about anywhere on the internet. I believe I bought this last load from eBay. Or you can take and cut your own pattern, 5-petal patterns or 4-petal patterns. Either one will work, just depending on what you choose. If you choose a 5-petal or a 4-petal, it'll give you a slightly different look of a rose, but it's not important. So step 1, we're going to take these and we're just going to break the little webbing apart that's in them and just break them off here. And then that will get trimmed up with a pair of tin snips, the little rag that's on there. I'll just cut those off with a pair of tin snips. These here are a pretty lightweight gauge. They're about just a little under a 1/16 of an inch thick steel. You can make them heavier or thinner depending on what you're going for. This just happens to be what I make all my roses out of, and they get a lot of form. So we'll just continue doing that to all the successive pairs, just breaking them off one by one. Bear with me. Do that until we get all these individualized. So the next step in this process is after we get them all broke off and we clean off all these little nubs. I don't know if the camera's focusing on that there, but after we clean off all these little nubs, then we'll go to texturing the petals. Beyond the roses, the blanks themselves that you get, you'll also need your stem material. I make my stems out of 3/8 inch rod, and I draw a tennon on one end, and then I draw out the rest into the stem. This gives a pretty good forging dimension and dynamic, and really gives the rose a lot of volume and pop. The other thing you'll need, which I don't have made up because I work on long bars, you'll need additional 3/8 rod to make the rose leaves themselves. So that'll be later on. We'll forge this out after we get our blanks textured. So in this next clip that I'll go to, I'll go ahead and start texturing these blanks. I'll show you how I do that. That gives it a pretty nice surface finish after we're done. So stay tuned. Here we are. Excuse me. Sorry. Nose is running a little bit. It's awful cold in the shop today. And of course, like most, I do not have a heated building to work in. Without further ado, so I texture all my rose petals on a wooden stump. I work on the end grain of a solid oak stump. This was a piece of railroad tie. In fact, I got it from a buddy right out of a sawmill, where it's the end drops off of what will become railroad ties. So these are untreated at that point. And this thing has served me well for multiple years. I've had this at least 6 years, and it's still holding up reasonably well. This is essentially what I consider a good setup to leave a good surface finish on the back side of your rose petal. This allows for a lot of texture, not only from the front but the back, and I'll show you that in a second. This here that I like to use a very sharp cross peen of a hammer. Doesn't have to be a very big hammer. As you can see, this thing here is only probably 8 ounces or so. Which is best if it's not a real heavy hammer. It makes a lot quicker work. So what we'll do is we'll start from one edge of the petal and we will work across to the other edge of the petal and repeat this process on all 5. So I'll show you what that looks like here. we'll hammer right away and go right across. And you can vary the amount of hammer marks that you would like to incorporate on your petals for different textures. You see she's rolling up on us a little bit. That comes from the metal stretching. Try to concentrate all your blows on the petal itself and don't hit in here. Those just look bad later on. So this being the biggest petal, this is actually the bottom of the bloom. And this is the most critical petal to take and get really good texture on because it'll be the most seen on the back side. So the result of hammering on the wood block, I don't know if you can see all that, but you get really nice texture on the back of your petal. As opposed to if you were to just hammer this on the anvil, this would be really flat and distorted on the back side and wouldn't really have much form or character. That's okay if you don't have a wood stump. I think anybody can find a wood stump, but that's just me. If you can't find a wood stump around and you got to make a job like this, and you got to do it on the anvil, it's okay. It just does not look as nice as what this does here. So you can leave this curled up, or you can flatten it back down a little bit, so that way it's easier and it lays flatter. And then you just turn and move on to the next petal. This job here is quite tedious, so don't worry. So I'm probably not going to show every petal. Otherwise the video would be 45 minutes long by the time we get them all done. But essentially this is the same process repeated again and again on all 5 sets of petals. So the next step that we're going to do, I'll come back after I got them all textured. And then the next step, we'll go ahead and fire up the forge and we'll start working on the stem. Alrighty, so I've got one whole set of flower petals done for the roses here for this kit. As you can see, I still have a lot more work to do with the other ones. Just to give you an idea of the time, what you can expect for this, I've done a lot of these. There's no way around it. These take about 20 minutes or so to take and hammer out a full set. So just keep that in mind. There's a lot of hammer work here before you go promising anybody that you'll make them a dozen roses or some such like that. I think the largest order that I've made to date of roses was an order of 50 roses. And boy, I tell you what, that was a lot of hammering all to do in just the period of a few days. So something to think about on that. But as you can see, they're turning out really well. And they're going to have a lot of pop and a lot of interest in them. You know, and that's really what we want. We want these things to be something that will be cherished for a lifetime. One note here: say you wanted a smaller rose. The only thing you have to do with a big kit like this, as you can see, I have 6 petals here lined out. If you wanted a smaller rose, say in diameter, all you have to do is remove one blank. Maybe your largest blank, and you get a smaller rose in diameter. Or just say you want the rose to look a little less full. Say you want it to look a little more on the wimpy side, or just give it a difference than your other roses in your set. You can just remove any number of petals, and it will give the rose a much more lighter feel. So, something to take into effect. Just keep that in mind when you're wanting to make a rose. You know, of course, obviously, if you only have to hammer three petals out, it's going to be great. You know, you'll be half or a third of the time here versus having to do them all. Nice thing is that the big petals, after you get those done, those are your hardest, and then they descend in difficulty after that, all the way down to your smallest petal. It takes just a few moments, and you've got it busted out. So something to keep in mind. and we'll get going on the next process, which is my favorite process, which is actually forging out the stem itself. So stay in touch and we'll keep watching and we'll get going here. Alrighty, and here we are. Just finished texturing the last of my roses. That was a lot of work, like I said. Now we're going to take and prepare our stem. We're going to start on just one of the ends. Doesn't matter, they're both the same. This piece here is 10 inches of 3/8 inch hot rolled round mild steel. We're going to heat approximately an inch, inch and a half of the end of this, and we are going to forge about 3/4 of an inch of it into a tenon on the end of this. And in the next clip, after I heat this up, you'll see it at the anvil, and I'll show you how we're going to draw that down, and we'll go from there. Alrighty, so I'm going to demonstrate this cold first before I get to forging. That way I can focus on my forging. As you can see, there's about 3/4 of an inch, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, on the edge of the anvil. The goal here, excuse the hammer in the way, the goal here is to use full face edge blows on this piece to take and create a shoulder from both sides. This is a good bit of forging practice to get a really nice even shoulder. I can't say that I'm the best at this to neck this down, but in one of the processes soon to come, it's kind of irrelevant and you'll see why. This is really good practice for any beginner to take and learn, is to try to conquer these hammer blows just like so. Knowing the difference between half on, half off blows, full face hammer blows, edge blows, and so on. They really help in good forging dimension. So I'm going to bring out the piece. I probably won't talk during it, maybe I will, but I'm going to focus on just doing like you see here, trying to get good edge blows in to really set those shoulders in and start drawing out the tenon. Since this is 3/8, we're looking for a 1/4 inch round tenon. So I won't actually have to set down that much material to make it slip through my blanks on the roses. So there won't be that much of a shoulder that I have to create. So I will start from, in this next clip, I'll go ahead and heat it up. And I'll start forging, and you'll see what I mean by the edge blows. And I'll show you the result. First, start our tenon by forging it square. And as you can see, it's quite the trick to get right in here at this corner or this edge of the anvil. A little half on, half off there. Just trying to set those other shoulders in a little better. But first we go square with our tenon, and then the next heat, we'll give this a little straighten. Alright, so hopefully you can see that there just fine. So we forge it square in this heat. The next heat, we're going to bring it out to a nice heat again, nice high heat, and we're going to round this off. It doesn't have to be quite 1/4 inch. It can be a little heavy of that, or whatever size hole you have put through your blanks. It can be a little heavy of that because it's nice to kind of just give this a sand, grind it to a nice perfect round shape if you need to. In some cases, I'll actually leave this tenon square, and it helps that the blanks not to slip and spin around whenever you assemble the actual rose kit on here. The only real critical thing about this tenon is you want it to be long enough that you can fit every blank on here and still have enough material to take and rivet over to squeeze the stack down. So anyways, enough of that. I'm going to go ahead and round this off and finish its length a little bit, and we'll move along. Alrighty, we're going to put it up on the diagonal. Still working with edge blows. We're going to round this off a little bit. Hit off the corners, and then we just round that into the rest of the piece. Like I said, you don't have to worry about getting this too accurate at this point, because there's about to be a tool that I'm going to show you that helps sharpen this corner up quite a bit, and it gives it a much more pleasing look. So right here, I just planish this off a little bit more. Right now we're not forging, we're just trying to take and smooth it up. This is particularly useful if you do not have a grinder, or otherwise it would just be kind of a pain in the butt to do so. This makes it a little nicer for you in the long run if you can get better at your forging technique. So that right there is good enough for a tenon. So now I'll move over to the vise, and I'll show you this tool that we're going to use to take and get this more square in here for our blanks to sit against it. Don't worry about getting too long of a tenon. It's better to have too long of a tenon and have to saw it off to length versus having too short of a tenon. So just keep that in mind. This is okay if it grows a little bit, as long as it's mostly to the same diameter that you need to go through the hole of the blank. If this is getting too thin for that, just take another little bite off and move a little more material if you need a little extra length but you don't have the width. So anywho, we'll go to the vise now and I'll show you the tool. Alrighty, I've got this locked in the vise, and as you can see, I've locked it in the jaws horizontally like so. What I'm going to do in this heat now, if you don't have a torch, you can go ahead and just heat this end up and then lock it in the vise, but think time is of the essence. Since I have a torch, I'm going to localize a nice heat right in this area, and I'm going to use what they call as a monkey tool. This monkey tool is essentially just a piece of rod. This happens to be about 5/8 of an inch around in diameter, with a 1/4 inch hole drilled in the end of it, and nothing on this end. And what this does is this slips over the tenon to protect the tenon, and it drives the shoulder in right here, and it helps upset this material without ruining your tenon. When it does that, that gives you a lot broader surface area here that you can slide those blanks over on. So that's what we are going to do. We're going to use this tool here, a monkey tool, to go over our tenon and drive with full, good, solid hammer blows, occasionally rotating the tool to create our tenon shoulder. So I'll go ahead and get the torch heated up, and in the next clip, that's what we'll be doing. Alrighty, I got my torch going here, getting it adjusted. You want a good hot torch when you're working here. Oh, we'll see how this goes. So essentially what we want to do is, alright, we want to heat just behind the shoulder that we want to make. Because we want this to get nice and swollen out when we upset this shoulder. You don't want to be heating the tenon portion of it. That doesn't need to be heated up because we don't want it to move around. We just want to heat the mass behind the tenon. If you're doing this in a coal forge or you're doing it in a gas forge, you have to cool off your tenon in up to the shoulder. But we're going to go ahead and try to get as much heat into this shoulder as we can. Get it nice and bright here. Whoops. Adjust the oxygen back here. We get this good heat on here, this nice big hot heat. Then I'll shut the torch off and I'll go to hammering. Oh. So we get a really nice forging heat right in here at this shoulder. So, alright. So I shut my torch off. Hopefully I can do this in speedy order here. Go ahead and slip your tenon on, your monkey tool on. and just drive it. Sometimes it likes to stick. That's okay. Just gotta coerce it. There we go. As you can see, it's created a really nice sharp shoulder now that we can take and do our work with. And it's also caused the material behind the shoulder to swell out. And that's going to look pleasing for a number of reasons when we draw down the rest of the stem. That gives that little bit of, I don't know what you would call it in a rose, but the part right underneath the calyx of the bloom of a rose, it kind of swells out a little bit. There's kind of like a nodule or something of that nature there. And it looks really aesthetic, and it looks kind of, well, it looks really legit. So, which we're trying to actually make a rose look like a rose. So, anyway, so we got that done. So now we will take and I'll finish my other 2 stems to this point, and then I'll go to the forge and we'll start drawing out the stem. I'm getting excited. Now here we are at the anvil. I'm going to show you, I'm going to run through this real quick cold, what I'm going to do. Over in the fire, I'm heating up my rose stem, and I'm still heating up and working from this end. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be fullering over the bick of the anvil, or the horn of the anvil. I'm going to be necking down behind this little boss area and back drawing it out to around 1/4 of an inch in diameter. A little heavy, maybe 5/16 in places. It's a stem, so you don't have to worry about being too precise with it. In order to do that and not overstress my tenon, I'm going to cool down the tenon material before I start the forging here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera. When I bring it out, you'll see that this tenon is already cold because it's been quenched off, and then the rest of this material will be nice and hot to a nice, a really bright, almost welding heat. Anytime you're working material on the horn, I cannot stress this enough, the horn is not overly supported. So your material needs to be hot. That way, the kinetic energy from your hammer blow is being transferred directly into the piece and doing the work, and not through the horn. In certain cast horn type applications, different cast anvils, you can actually snap the horn off your anvil by doing this, by drawing over the horn. Drawing over the horn is about the most effective method I have found of drawing out material, and I've used it for years. I know you can go to the edge of the anvil and you can get really aggressive drawing out. I do not recommend that to the beginner, on the basis that it takes one big heavy blow too many and you've thinned the piece to a point that there's no return and you just have to lop it off and throw it away. The horn is much more gradual of a draw out process. Also, I do not draw out clear out to the tip. There again, if you're drawing out way out here, you think that you're being more aggressive, and you are. You're adding more stress to the horn itself and taking a chance of causing damage to your anvil. So I always aim for a spot that's as close to the widest portion of the horn that you can get. The wider the horn is, or the thicker your horn material is, the better off you are when you're doing this operation. So I'm going to go ahead and heat this up, cool off that end, and start drawing it down. I want you to take note of how quickly this works with a fairly lightweight hammer and good hammer progression of hammer blows. So we'll get started. Alright, got my end cool. Time to start drawing. We're doing 90-degree turns to reduce the material stock thickness. and working back towards yourself. Keep feeding the material into the horn of the anvil, doing 90-degree turns. Now work it back out. Remember, when you're drawing down, you always go square first. So you want to stop a little heavy of your finished thickness you're shooting for. So there you go. You can see that that creates a nice reduction of stock behind that boss and really accentuates that. We're square yet. Don't worry about cleaning up the lumpiness. It's going to be lumpy. It's a stem. As you see, we drew out quite a bit of material back to here. So right now, it's just proud of 1/4 inch. It's about 5/16. That'll work in our favor when we round it back out. We're not going to do that just yet. We're going to continue drawing out our stem, and then we will come along and round the whole thing up and give it some texture. So that'll be in the next clip. I'll just go ahead and keep drawing this out. Instead, I'm going to actually start back here by the tongs and now start working towards the area that I've already got drawn out until I get it to the length that I like. So we will do that in the next video clip. Alrighty, start back from your rein in, work fast and efficient, 90-degree turns all the way up this stem. Hit, turn, hit, turn, hit, turn, hit, turn. Sorry, going off camera here for a second. Straighten that out on the flat of the anvil. What we got, spin around. As you can see, I've reduced that size quite a bit. So I'm about at the length that I am wanting on this. If you have extra, that's okay. That's why we calculate for that. So this way you can cut that off to length and make all your rose stems the same. So I'm going to forge this out a little more, and then I'm going to round it up. The 90-degree hit, turn, hit, turn, hit, turn is about the fastest method I have found to take and draw it out. I know there's other methods out there of drawing out as far as speed. Some guys like to go hit all 4 sides. I find this is not needed. It's just a lot of turning in the hand for especially the beginner to do. There's times where I've done that when I'm trying to get a nice asymmetrical taper on something, but it's usually not in the main drawing out process. I have found been able to keep as much heat in the stock just by doing 90-degree turns, like so. Your hand should be here, there, here, there, here, there. Repeating that motion over time will allow you to do stuff like this in your sleep. So anyway, so we got that drawn out. Next process, I'll go ahead and show you. When I come back, I will show you the rounding up of this stem. Here we go. Alrighty, so here we go. We're going to take and just round off the corners here on the horn of the anvil. There's no need in making this super round. We're wanting a stem. So there again, working on the horn of the anvil, produce these little divots along the stem's path here on the corner. We're just trying to round it up now a little bit, hitting in random spots, working up into the bottom of that boss, just under that, there. Alright, so I've already done this back part here off camera. I ran out of battery and juice, so I just figured I'd go ahead and do that much of it and finish this out. But there we go. So as you can see, that's really nice. So my stem work's done. So I'll go over to the layout table now and show you what we're going to do next. We're going to start working on them leaves. And that'll be the next clip. So, alrighty, so here we are. I've got all my stems done now. Set off to the side. And as you can see, I've already started on my leaf work. Quite a bit of it for these. This is a little bit of a different approach for rose leaves than what I normally do, but I figured it'd be fun to show you guys this method. As you can tell, it gives some quite striking leaves, I think. So, so as you can see, these look a little long, and you're right, they are a little long. But what we're going to do is we're going to create leaf clusters or branches. So the branches are going to essentially be one main leaf, and then there's going to be two other leaves coming off of each branch, welded all together, and then it'll all get welded to the stem in preparation before we do our bloom. So the trick here is to work efficiently and make a bunch of leaves. These are fun, and so I've already got a few of them made. I got a bunch more to go, 2 each for each one of these that you see here, so that's a lot of work. But I'm going to go through the process. I'm not going to show all those. All I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how that I came about and derived this leaf here. I will have another video in a video series of how to forge a leaf. There's a bunch of ways of forging a leaf out there, so I'm not going to cover that. I'm going to cover essentially my way of spreading the leaf and how I came about deriving up at this design here. So that's what will be in the next clip, and we'll get the fire going. Alrighty, so I've formed my leaf blank on the end of the bar, and now I'm going to turn it up on the diagonal and start spreading it. You want to come down flat with your hammer blows. It's going to start producing that shape. Then you want to hit to either side of the center line of your leaf. It's going to pull off, still coming down, flat face hammer blows, full face. That's going to pull the material off to both sides of that leaf. And if you look real close, check it on the camera here. Yeah, you can see this line or this ridge develop. That's what you want to see. That's how you know you're pulling off the material to each side of that center line. So that's what we want to do to start creating our leaf. And if you can't tell for the way that I'm hitting it, the way that I'm hitting this is I'm using the toe or the front of the hammer on this side of the leaf, and I'm using the heel or the rear of the hammer head on this side of the leaf. That's how you pull those out. These are not angled because you would hit the hammer, the anvil face. These are coming straight down nice and square, and because they're biting off a little bit of material at a time, they're pulling the material and thinning it to the left and to the right, naturally. So, there's that there. We've got that much done. I'll go on to the shaping now of all my little chisel lines, and I'll show you how I do that. Alrighty. While our material's heating up, I want you to notice something. See how clean the surface of my anvil is? That's the way I want to keep it. So when I do my chisel work, I use, as you can see, a pretty nasty piece of scrap plate. Any piece of scrap steel. I suggest you do the same. That's going to be part of this process here because we're going to want to cut, excuse the magnetic chisel here, we're going to want to be able to cut all the way down through the leaf towards the end of our chisel cut. You'll see how that works here in a second. And you don't want to damage the face of your anvil, which is the most important, or secondary. You don't want to damage your chisels. So just having a scrap piece of mild steel plate, as you see, this has been plasma cut off the larger plate, so it doesn't matter. But you want something like this to be able to cut off into. Also, I do not use my forging hammers to hit the tops of my tools because my tooling I usually temper to be pretty hard or pretty tough, and I don't want the gnar marks or the mar marks in the face or the surface finish of my hammer. That'll translate out onto the steel. So I always find either a cheap hammer or a soft face hammer that I've taken the temper out of. And I think this one was at Harbor Freight that I found this one. But that way I can take and hit this material and I don't have to worry about jacking up a hammer face. And that's all I use this hammer for, is to hit top tooling. So that's just a little suggestion. Hope you find that helpful. So in the next clip here, we'll go ahead and do our chisel cuts. Alrighty, with our piece up to temperature, we're going to set it right on our chisel plate. Give it a little straighten here, and we're going to start at the very back. I like cutting in my side grooves first, or my side veins, if you will, on these leaves. The reason for that being is if you make your center groove, you have a tendency, not always the case, but you have a tendency to want to overcut your center line, like so, with the back of your chisel, and it leaves little chop marks all the way across your center line. So I like doing my side lines first, or my side chisel points for the veins first, and then I come back and I will do that center line. As you can see, this is already cooled down to about a black heat, and that's okay. It doesn't take a lot of heat to do this, plus these things, this thin of material, it's going to pretty much, how do I want to say, it's going to cool down almost as time you get it up here anyhow. So it's just a waste of time. You can work it at this heat. If it gets too tough to where it doesn't really want to react anymore, you can always take it for another heat. But as you can see, I can already get quite a bit of work done. So if you notice, that plate will stop spinning. If you notice, at the end of these chisel cuts, they're starting to spread out a little bit and give the leaf some more dimension. That's what we're wanting. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm taking the back heel of my slit chisel, I'm taking the back heel of the slit chisel and I'm working it out to that last little bit and chopping all the way through. And when I do that, it's wedging that open to even the smallest extent. So we'll come over here, just keep doing that. If you keep doing that, it will wedge it further and further open as you cut through it cleanly. And it'll give it a lot of dimension. As you can see, it's already got there. Don't worry about trying to clean up the rag on the inside of this. Because there again, it's only cutting out through the last little bit here. And that can be sanded off. Anything that transfers on the back side, that can be sanded off. So I'm going to take another heat and I'm going to go ahead and put in the center line, and then that leaf will be ready to be cut off. As you can see right there, it gives it a lot more character than what it started with. Oh, when we come out with the next heat, if you see this ridge that I had showed you in the last part of it there, that ridge is what I'm going to be following. So there's the second reason for that ridge. It makes it nice. I'm going to follow that ridge with my slit chisel. And that's going to give me a nice straight line right down through the center of all those marks. Alrighty, got it nice and warm again. I'm going to go ahead and start at the tip, and I like to work the chisel back to myself. Give nice little setting blows. And as you're working this bit here, you want to make sure that this chisel, the rear edge of this chisel, is riding in the cut that you have just previously made. That way you don't get double cut lines like I did there just a little bit. If you don't, you can you can force it over and clean it up a little bit. Once again, this is a natural thing. We're trying to do a organic project, so we don't have to make sure everything's immaculate. But the cleaner the forging, the better job it'll look in the long run. So there you go. Now you can see that line straight through there, and it gives it a lot of interesting look there. At this point, say you're doing something else besides a rose, you could give the leaf some shape. You could maybe even feather it a little bit by hitting these left and right and make them give a little wave to them, give it some character. Most roses have straight leaves, so that's the way we're going to leave this here. So I'll go ahead and take a heat, and I'll just cut this off. Don't need to see that. When I cut my material off, I always do it in a circular fashion on the hot cut hardy. So I hit on all sides, and what that does is that prepares the parent bar stock for the next heat, so I can make my next leaf. Like I said, I didn't show how I made the leaf bud in this video. I'll do a whole separate video on just making leaves, like blanks and buds. But you get the ideal here. So the next clip, it'll be, I will actually take and I'll have my leaves done, and I'll be starting the assembly process of the stem and the leaves and getting that all welded up. And I got a few points to share with you there. So that'll be the next clip. And if you got this far in the video, I appreciate your patience. Roses are a long process. It takes me just about 3.5 hours when I'm not talking and when I'm not demonstrating to make one single rose. So just starting out, it took me 8 to 10 hours to make one rose. Seems like a real long time, but you know, everything was new to me. I've probably made at least 1,000 roses since I started blacksmithing. So you know, that's what you can expect once you get good at them, is to be able to do them in about 3.5 hours. To just give you kind of an ideal of time here. So I'm going to go ahead and finish cutting this off, make my next leaf, and then we'll go to assembly. And here we are with what I consider a really nice rose branch. I've already cut off all my roses. Leaves were about this long, all the stems were anyhow. I went ahead and cut them all off, the pairs here to take and go together. And this is how I will start assembling my branches of my roses. I'm going to use an electric welder, you know, a MIG welder to do this and get these all tacked up. I won't show that in the video, just so this way I can protect the lens of my camera. Fairly expensive camera, so I don't want to jack that up, and I don't have the correct proper protective lens on there to keep it safe. So I'll weld this off camera, and I'll come back and show you what that looks like. Once I get that done, we will actually be over at the vise, and I'll be showing you how I clean up these joints and blend everything in before I assemble it to the stem itself. But this is what each branch will look like on the rose stems themselves. There will be 2 branches of sets of 3 like this. It gives it an attractive look. It doesn't overpower the rose with leaves. I know, like I've said before, that, you know, some guys, they'll actually do, you know, 6 or more leaves or so, 5 or 6 leaves on it. You can do what you want. Different jobs call for different things, but I like the simplicity of a 3-leaf design. One thing I would mention though and suggest is we're trying to make something look very organic. So doing stuff at straight angles or lines where everything's intersecting at the same point, I don't like doing. I like to make it a little more branch and have things a little more offset, if you will. Kind of like so. This also helps when you go to clean up these weld joints, that they're not right in line. If they're right in line with one another, you have a tendency when you're sanding, if you use a flat disc on an angle grinder or even a belt sander, you have a tendency at the toe of your weld to take and thin the parent bar material when you're trying to clean and blend this in. and it's really difficult not to do that. So if you put one like that and one like that, it's less noticeable. You have to do progressively less sanding in this area to take and get the same effect. Plus, I think it looks a little more naturally occurring. But that's personal preference again. So I'll get this welded, and the next shot, or the next clip, will be at the vise cleaning it up. Well, I've got the welding done on these leaves here, these branches, and as you can see, this is how it turns out. The key to doing this and getting a really good clean transition and job is you want to put as little weld as you need to take and actually attach the leaves. The more weld, if you got this really big and bulky, it just makes more work for yourself. So don't get carried away with the welder. I know it's real easy to try to just start filling this in and start really building it up, but it just makes more work in the long run. So really put in the minimum amount of weld that it takes to fuse the leaf to the long branch or the stem. I use a 4.5 inch angle grinder. Actually, this is a 5-inch Bosch angle grinder. I don't know if you can see the, yeah, there it is there. The camera's not really focusing in on it, but it's been a good angle grinder, plus it's a variable speed for me. Any angle grinder should work. I use flat disc, just a flat disc consumable from Harbor Freight. With this, you'll notice in a lot of my videos, I use a lot of Harbor Freight tools, and I use a lot of professionally made tools from all over. It's just really a mix of what I can get and what I can get on the cheap. You know, I try to use really good quality tools when I can, but consumables, hey, you use them up and you pitch them. So I don't get too finicky about those. No need in spending $30 on something that you're just going to throw away anyhow. I can't tell you what these are. I think they're like a whole package of them. It's a multi-disc pack for like $9. So I don't worry about it too much. Now would be a good time. I'm going to show up. I debated a little bit about whether I was going to show you how I sand this. But I'm going to flip on the angle grinder now. It's going to get really loud. So now's the time to turn down your cellular device or the volume on your computer. It's going to get loud for a second. And then I'll give you the thumbs up when it's good for you to turn up your volume again. So here we go. Alright, so we got one part of this leaf done. You can see how quick and easy that is. Now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and loosen up the vise here. Ugh, crank that down tighter than I thought. Whenever you crank down these vices, you want to make sure you have this locked in the vise pretty solidly. Especially if you're going to use an angle grinder on it. As it may flick the piece out of the vise. And let's see here, I think we're still in focus. Yep, we're still in focus here. So now you just clean up the back side, and if necessary, you can clean up the webbing in the center here. You can clean up the sides of this piece as well. So I do the front and back first, and then I worry about the sides. Well, almost said it to you. Alright, turn down your volume, and here we go. Alright, now you can see that that's done. Few key points. Do not worry about getting this perfectly shiny smooth. It would look weird. If you remember, we left hammer texture on these stems. So try to mimic that with the sanding. You know, leave a lot of those facets and, you know, cut-in marks and things like that. It just aids in the look whenever we go back to finishing. When we go to finish this piece, what we'll do after we get everything welded up, everything cleaned and sanded and looking good, we will actually rescale this entire piece. So this way this is completely all one color again, and you won't be able to see the sanding lines anymore. And that's kind of the trick to hide where you've done all this sanding work to take and go and do this on. I'm going to run real quick. I forgot to grab my roll of sandpaper here. I wanted to show you my technique for finishing off these joints real quick. So take 1 second. Alrighty, this is what I use. Once again, another great, crappy Harbor Freight consumable, just some sandpaper on a roll. I take out a length that's about 1 foot long at a time and rip it off one way. See if you can see that. Sorry, bumping the camera. Okay, and then I take it and I grab it and I rip off lengthwise. Just like that. And now, you say, how are we going to get in between all this area? This is how. Now you can get right in between all these little hard to reach areas with a piece of sandpaper and just working with your arms up and down. I actually taught this method in a class just this past weekend to a bunch of guys. We were making planishing stakes for doing raising copper and pretty much anything else you would need a planishing stake for. But that allows you to get in there and clean up all your inside joints of your weld and stuff like that in fairly short order. Just flip it around and do it again to the front side. And this is a quick, really efficient way of removing welding sputter and lines and scratches and things off of hard to reach places. You'd never be able to get in here with this grinder. The best you could do is a file. And so the sandpaper just makes it so much quicker. So that's what I do. And as you can see, the piece is pretty well shined up. Nice and smooth. You can see I've left some of the welding stuff alone. Like I said, once we scale this whole thing up, that's going to look like those leaves belong there. And that's what we're wanting it to look like. So I'll do the other one that way, and then you essentially just repeat the process and weld the branches onto the stem. I'll come back when I'm ready to take and do the actually the stacking of the petals and start doing the bloom of the rose. So there we go. That's what we got for the cleanup leaves. That's what I can help you out on that. It's a real nice way of making branches for trees, rose stems, you name it. So next shot, we'll be working on the rose bloom. Alright there, guys and gals. As you can see, I've done colored this piece now. I've blended everything in, I sanded that up, and then I rescaled everything. And I mean, if you look at that right off at the distance, it's very hard to distinguish any of the welds where this comes in, and it makes it look really natural. So as you can see, we've got our tenon up here. It's just slightly out of focus. If you give me a second, I'll readjust this. It's a little higher. Just wanted to see that limit first there. See if I can get this readjusted. There we go. Alright. The fun and joy of doing this yourself. Usually I'd have my wife film me and then I wouldn't have to worry about this, but I'm out in the shop by myself today, so you'll just have to bear with me. So the first step, and you want to get these in the right order, trust me. Once you peen this down and get this tenon set, it really sucks to find out you got them all jumbled up and in the wrong order. Really nothing for you to do but to try to grind off that tenon and restart with a whole new stem. Or you'll have to grind it off and then plug weld it, plug weld another stem on, and then go from there. Real big pain in the butt. Trust me, I've done it. So the very first one, critical. You don't start with your biggest first. You start actually with the calyx. This is the bottom of the bloom. This is what would have split off to reveal the actual flower bloom. And that goes on first. You want to take and have your texture side, not this side, not the back of the leaves, but the front of the leaves pointed in the up direction. So this way when you peel this out later, you'll have the top texture and not this. This is always meant to be the back side of the flower. So go ahead and just slide that on there and make sure it's good and seated at the base of the flower. You can start seeing how that transition works real nice now. And that's why we started with the bigger stock and then we upset that material with the monkey tool. Next in order, let me make sure I'm still getting this in the shot. Next in order will be your biggest blank. That goes on next. Then progressively smaller as you go along. So this one will be next. So on and so forth. So all those go on there until you got them all nice and tight on there. And what we'll do is I'll actually re-grip this, and then I will use that same monkey tool from this side here and drive those flowers in there nice and tight and make sure they're really good and squeezed down on there. And at times I'll use a pair of vice grips on both sides of the bloom, pinching all this material together to get a really nice tight bloom back together before I actually heat up the tenon with a torch and then drive it home. So at this point, see if I can get this in the shot. As you can see, that tenon's a little long. There you go. As you can see, that tenon's a little long. We don't want it that long. We actually only want it to stick up about 1/4 of an inch, 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch above. Once all these are compressed, we want it to only stick up about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch above the actual material or the bloom itself. This gives us enough of a rivet head to hold everything together, but it's not so bulky as to cause this tenon here. Make sure I'm in shot here. It'll make it so where it's not so tough for this tenon here to take and bend over. You don't want this to bend. You want it to upset cleanly when you do it. So I'll reposition. I'll get another shot. And in the next clip, you'll see vice grips on here holding this bundle together. And I'll already have that sawn off, have that tenon sawn off there. Hopefully I'm still in the clear shot there. I'll have that tenon sawn off and ready for peening. And then we'll just do the peening operation. And then we'll be ready to start this bloom. As you can see, this is a pretty gorgeous way of making a rose. Long stem there. But that's the whole project coming together. That's one thing I love about roses is it's multi-processes that all come together to make the final piece. So at first you feel like you're not really getting anywhere. You're just making parts. But then once you get done with all these little parts, they all come together for this really nice and impressive piece at the very end. And if you do a whole bouquet or an arrangement of these, once again, it's just working on each individual little piece and putting in the time and the detail into the leaves, into the stem work, and doing each process very, very well. And when you get done, you really get something that's pretty astoundingly beautiful. You know, at least I think. Some people would say that this is hideous, but, you know, that's them, not me, and that's definitely not my customers. My customers believe my work's beautiful, so, hey, there's that, as long as they buy it. So, anyways, next shot, I'll have this clamped, and we'll start the riveting process. Alrighty, and here we are. Well, I've got it all locked up here. Got my vise grips on my bundle that holds my bundle together. I've driven my bundle really tight, very tightly together and locked on the vise grips, and made sure they're all lined up. So what I'll do first is I will actually heat up the tenon a little bit, and then I will put on the bloom over that heated up tenon, and then I will use the ball end of my ball peen to lightly tap and spread out the end of that tenon after I've heated it with a torch. So this is my method. There's other ways of making tenons, and if you're real good, you can do this in the forge and get a lot of good localized heat on just the tenon itself. But I like, for time efficiency, I use the torch and the rosebud, and I have it. So that's what I use. So I'll get set up here. Give me a second. I hate a lot of dead air space, but there's just really no way of doing it without, you know, shooting like 8,000 clips here. So keep working with me. I hope you guys have gotten to the point that you feel comfortable enough that you think you could take and make these roses. They're a lot of fun. They're a lot of fun to make. They are a lot of work, but they're well worth it. They really are. So once again, we're trying to just heat this nub up like you see. We don't want to heat up the stem any. We just want our tenon hot. It's okay to get a little extra heat down here, but we want to try to get just our tenon to move, because that's what we want to swell out and hold our rose bloom tight. If you get your stem too hot, what'll end up happening is it'll just start bending around on you when you go to take and hammer this closed. So I about got it up to heat here, where I want it, nice and warm and happy. So I'll set this aside back on my torch stand. Go ahead and slip my piece through. It's on there nice. And go ahead and start cleaning that out now. I have to readjust my tongs. I didn't get it quick enough, and my rose stem's bending anyhow. I got it locked out too far outside the vise, but sorry, I'll just finish what I'm trying to show here, just to get the petals on. You may be asking yourself, well, Roy, why didn't you just heat it up in place? Reason for that being, I try to get most of my work done with the bloom. I kind of messed this up. It's getting a little wonky. It's alright. I try to get most of my peening done without the bloom on, because if you heat up the bloom at the same time you're heating that up, as you're trying to drive that tight, it's just stretching the material of the bloom, and this is pretty thin stuff, so it never gets tight, in other words. So I'm going to fix my wonkiness here off camera, just because I feel the most comfortable like that. I got to go take it over the anvil and do a few things to get the crook out of the stem now, and maybe grip it a little lower in the vise. But I'll do that, and then I'll come back and we'll heat up this bit here, and we'll finish riveting that down. Live demonstration, once again, it's just a product of the thing. If you got 100% focus and you're not trying to work with the camera and do all this at the same time, it goes a lot smoother. But this is kind of one of the most critical stages here, is getting this tenon right. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that real quick off camera, and then we'll be right back. Alrighty, just a real quick fix. Didn't take me too long to do that. I just had to do it off camera, just for the sake of time. But, I mean, I was only really realistically gone for about 2 minutes. But in YouTube time, it's seconds. So we'll adjust our flame here a little bit. We'll heat this up. Just my flame up here. Get this nice and hot. Takes a moment to get that stem nice and hot again. As you can see, those petals like to heat up before that tennon does. So that's a bit of a trick to take and work with, but we'll get this pinned down now. Start working at that. Doing nice, tight setting blows. It's going to slowly get tighter and tighter. Keep hammering that down. Working your edges. Right down, driving that stem home. Getting it nice and tight. So, there you go, that's what we're looking for. So I don't know if you can see that there. Yep, good thing. So you can see it didn't take a whole lot of stem to get to that result. But now it's nice and tight. You can see in there, it's tightly driven. And that's what we want. If you don't drive it tight enough, or if you didn't compress your bloom before you started pinning things together, what would happen is when we go to take and roll all this rose up and actually bloom the rose, these petals would shift around on you and they would spin. And trust me, spinning is kind of a pain in the butt at the end. The end of your process. There's really only one way to fix it that I know of, and that's kind of create a friction fit with the petals. And then that stops the spinning. But there you go, as you can see right there, hopefully. And you can see that's what we were shooting for, right there. About a 3/8 inch knob on the end of there. But so there we are. I'll go ahead and relock it in the vise, and I'll go ahead and heat, and we'll start doing the bloom in the next clip. Stay with me. We're almost there, guys. Alrighty, on to the fun part. This part, you're going to need a pair of either needle nose pliers that have had their teeth sanded off, or you will need a nice pair of scrolling tongs to do this next little bit here. It's just not possible to do it with a hammer. Maybe it is, but it's certainly not efficient. I'm going to heat up my torch again. You know, there are guys who like to take and do this in the forge, but as a method of convention, I like to take and go whichever way is the easiest. Whichever way seems easiest to get the job done. And this way is definitely a lot easier than heating the whole bloom up, trying to get it all to stay in one place, and do it in the forge. There's other ways of making roses that are a lot more conducive to that when you've actually forged the petals out yourself. It's a little more conducive to actually doing that. So I got the torch set to fairly low heat, because you don't need a whole lot. You don't need this thing blaring here. We're not trying to cut it in half. We're just trying to take and get the petal nice and hot. Once it's good and hot, we're going to grab it from one end and curl it in on itself, and then pitch straight up. And then you're going to go to the next petal and do the same edge. I'm just doing the left side. You can do the right and go the opposite way, but I'm going counterclockwise. So first I'm going to grab this thing, roll it in on itself, and peel it straight up. So on and so forth as we go around here. So hopefully I'm not ruining the shot with my big hand here. Pull it straight up. Heat your next petal, and keep on doing the same thing. You want to get a good amount of heat down here in the base too. You want it to bend at that base so you can get a really nice tight bloom. So get your roll on your corner of the petal and peel it straight up. And that's how we are going to create this rose. And if you look at roses, they got, you know, those interlocking leaves. That's what we're creating with this, and that's how it's done. So we're going to hit it up again, heat up this next petal. We're going to curl it in and peel it straight up. And then I like to come around and heat the whole bloom up and then tighten the whole thing up in the clockwise direction, not counterclockwise, to create the bud. So if you went clockwise at first, you'll want to go counterclockwise with this squeezing action to get it nice and tight. Because as you can see there, if you only did one petal, you could create a little small rosebud, which is kind of neat, which I've done for demos before at fairs and whatnots. This is going to get dirty and scaly. Don't worry. You're going to do a lot of torching to this. Don't worry about brushing it. It's not really going to benefit you any to try to brush off the scale that you've created. You're just going to heat it up again in successive heats. You're just going to create more scale. So heat each petal and keep doing the same thing and peeling it straight up. As you go out, your bundle's less and less tight, so you don't have to curl it as much to lift it up. As you can see, this doesn't take too long. You just do this and you're just lifting it straight up. So I'm hoping that you guys are enjoying these YouTube videos that I'm putting on. If you've watched it this far, you must have. It is very difficult to pick the right amount of time to talk. I know some guys have said I talk too long, or you talk too much, or this or that, but I don't exactly see those guys contributing to the YouTube community either. I do have a day job. I do this for a living. I work 60 hours a week doing this, and then I take time out to try to invest into the community by and large. Yeah, that means I'm not going to answer every email and every message that you guys send to me. I do try. But, I have a family. I have a life. I'm not just some guy that sits on the computer and trolls people all day long. I'm sure people have had plenty of that in their life. Plenty of trolls out there. I'm not saying that any of the guys that's ever contacted me about me taking too long to say something are trolls, but there again, I'm doing this at free of charge to you for your viewing pleasure. And these are processes that I've learned in classes I've taken, master smiths I've studied under, different people from all walks of life, and just trying to put it out there so they can help those guys out that are aspiring to do this for maybe a living one day. That's also why I do my tooling. That's why I'm creating all this cheap tooling and improvised tooling on the site to try to help out those guys. When I got started in blacksmithing, there was not a lot of resource for me. There was a few guys out there, but anytime it came around to wanting to get a power hammer or trying to get some tooling to help out, everything was priced so sky high that it made it a really tough pill for me to swallow, just being newly into it and trying to decide between putting bread and milk on the table for wife and kids or feeding my addiction. So I'm hoping with this YouTube channel I can feed everybody's addictions for blacksmithing, make it cheaper by and large for you all, and you guys get to see some pretty cool projects in the long run. But we'll see how it goes. This year's a new year. I'm feeling excited about it already. We'll see what we can accomplish with the YouTube channel in 2017 here. I got a lot of real big builds coming up that I think everybody's going to like a lot. And I'm not just saying that. Not gonna say anything yet about that, but I think everybody will like them. So this clip's running a little longer just because I want to get to the point where I'm rolling the calyx, just to show you how I do that. And then we'll clip back over and I'll show you how I roll out the bloom. So this is kind of all in real time. Seeing here. Allows me to ramble too, which is my favorite. For those of you that are for those of you who are interested in it and are watching, I do have a website that I'm giving away, that I take and give away some of the tools that I make in my blacksmithing videos. Some of the simpler projects, the stuff that's easily shipped, I'm giving away some stuff. It's called blacksmithspdfs.com. And I'm trying to release a newsletter once a month with that, and with that once a month having a giveaway on that site. So make sure you step over there and subscribe to the newsletter, get in on all that good stuff. It's also where I'll do pre-releases and let people know what's coming up in videos, so you guys can kind of have an idea of what to expect. But I've got a bunch more power hammer builds. I've got a few press builds, hydraulic presses, even a rolling mill build coming up. With all my luxurious free time I have to do this. Once again, just want to invest in guys, help the beginner and more intermediate, and guys who are wanting to try to take this to the next level. Trying to help all you guys out there. So, get all these roses up. So as you see, with each level, you want to take and make sure this bundle stays tight. The tighter your bundle, the better your rose is going to look. Otherwise, it's going to look more carnation-like. That's okay if you want that. But the tighter your bundle, the better your rose will look. So there's a rose, there's a particular style you can lead with, right there. You can let the rose all be up like that. We're going to give it a lot more form and function. So I'm going to heat up now these little calyx, I call them the little leaves, and now we're going to bend these down. So you want to get a good amount of heat right into the base of the rose. Right into the base of the rose. And I hope you guys can see by now why it's so important, why I use a torch for this. But once you get a good heat into the base, hopefully you guys are able to see that, you bend it straight down, and then you curl the tip up. You can curl the tip before, like so, and then lock in and just bend the thing down, like so. And that's the easiest way of doing it. So we'll just heat this up, do the same thing. I gotta cool off my tongs, and we'll flip out here and go to the next part here of doing this. I was debating about making this video, and I know it's a long video. I was debating about making a video this long. Guys don't like to watch videos this long. For me, it's hard to find time to watch videos this long. But where else on YouTube are you going to find how to make roses? Start to finish. So, kind of difficult to have just the right amount of education, and just the right amount of talking, and just the right amount of time of shutting up and getting the job done. So, alright. I got those down, no particular order. There it is. So I'm going to clip out, cool off these tongs. They've gotten quite hot. That heat travels up the handle. But I'm going to go ahead and finish that up now. I'll go ahead and cool the tongs, we'll come back and we'll roll out part of the bloom. I won't make you guys watch all. Alrighty, ladies and gents. We are going to get this thing rolled real quick. I already said goodbye. I already said my goodbyes to you in the other video. So I'm going to get this thing strolling, give you a few quick tips, and then we're going to roll that big, beautiful bean footage. Or credits. Whichever one. So here we go. Sorry about the bad jokes. Here, see here? Ooh, got a torch. Alright. So to roll out these petals, you essentially just go in reverse of what you had originally done. You go to each petal and you roll out a little at a time and just work your way back around. So we're just going to heat this up. And for this, we're looking for, get this torch a little tighter, a little more fuel to it. There we go. We're looking to just heat up just the ridge of the petals. Get a little more pressure here. See, I can get this thing heating up here. Nice. I also went to the house for just a little bit off camera. And I just let the whole thing kind of cool down back to room temp before I go on to this point. It allows it to be a little more rigid and you can get a little more bite on your petals to give this a little more bloom. So I got that done, so now I'll move to this petal, the next one that is tucked inside. So it's tucked on the inside. We're going to heat that one up, and that'll be our next one, and we'll keep going. Oh, there's no right and wrong way of doing this. My suggestion is to just kind of grip it at some different angles as you go around from petal to petal in the bloom. That gives it the most pleasing look. Don't always grab it in the same spot. Don't always bend it out to the exact same way. That's what makes these things fun. It's what gives them a lot of interest. Is depending on how you shape them here. Like this one, I'm going to give it 2 bends. When I first started making roses, I would make these roses all look as close to the same as I possibly could. And what I found is although that played into my OCD nature of wanting things nice and straight and square, I found that it looks better if you loosen up a little bit and just kind of let the rose kind of bloom out differently with each one that you do. It makes it look more authentic, I think. Some might beg to differ on that, but like I said, it gives it a lot more natural look, a lot more natural pop, I think. You know, I try to ruffle the edges a little, give it some look, give it some form. And really kind of show that texture, all that hammer texture on them petals that we imparted in it. In the finished piece, when I do that, you'll see the difference. So, this video has already become long enough, so I'm not going to show the color. I'm not going to show the way I color it. Mainly it's for the torch. And it's after I get my wire rolling done. I'm going to do that in a separate video. That way you guys can have a break from listening to me talk. And, it gives it a nice break. And I get another video out of the deal. Which is cool. Not everybody's going to watch this whole thing. They get. So, as you can see, this is starting to look very rose-like and very lifelike. We're giving it these crinkles and giving it some shape, not all the same shape. just enough to give it some interest. Rolling and scrolling these petals around and shaping them around a bit. Goal here again is just let it kind of flow. You know, bend it and twist it. Get it torqued around, and we'll really get a neat rose out of the deal. You can go into the inner bundles as much as you like. I don't go too far in the inner bundles. I like to leave it like as if this rose is just coming out. So I'll give the tips just a little bit of a tweaking to kind of match them, make it look like I at least attempted to get all the way down in it. But it's not necessary to go all the way in and mess that up. But that little tight, that little tight spiral we work on the inner part of that rose, I just give it a few little tongue pinches here and there. You can see that. I get that inner part there. I just give it a few little tongue pinches and some scrolls around. That way it doesn't look like just raw edges of metal. It actually looks like there was an attempt to make a rose out of it here. Be careful not to go too much with this. You can go too far with these and end up making them look not very authentic at all. And that's obviously counterproductive in what we want. I'm just heating up this petal here. There's a petal sticking out. Probably can't see it on the camera. Nope, but it's a little awkward. Just give it a little more. Give it a little more look. So these will naturally bend out a little bit. So I just give them a little squeeze when I'm done. Get them all nice and tight again. And there we have it. That's a rose. Woo! Pop that torch there. So now that it's done, I just go to the wire wheel and wire wheel it up after it's done to the point and it's cooled down a little bit. And then once it's all wire wheeled, I would do a coloring and everything. Like I said, I'll do that in a whole separate other video, just doing the finishing on it. Anyways, appreciate you guys staying around this long, and those of you that would like to like and subscribe, I appreciate the support. And for anybody who has bought my cam hammer plans or the revised DaVinci cam hammer plans, I greatly appreciate it. That helps support this, makes it viable for me to actually do this, and allows me a little more freedom to kind of make a lot of cool stuff and give a lot of cool stuff away. Appreciate you all watching, and we'll catch you next time. Happy smithing.